Let's pray. In this moment of silence and in time, we acknowledge and recognize Source, the source of all living things, called many names, but then we learn in the Tao Te Ching, when we name it, it no longer is. So in this moment, if we just open up to the experience, the feel, the living of this force that runs through us, whatever name you give it is okay. What's most important, can you feel it? Can you feel it deep within the center of your very being? And it is there where the calm and the balance and the harmony and the peace and the joy and the love. Let us feel that now. And so it is. Namaste. So I hope that you're enjoying the Tao Te Ching as much as I am. My action this week centered around happiness for me. And I made a decision to choose happiness. And someone asked me, they said, well, how are you doing? And I said, I'm happy. And they go, for what reason? I said, absolutely no reason. And they looked at me like I may need a checkup. For absolutely no reason, except that I chose to be happy. And I think that's what we're learning in this study of the Tao Te Ching, is that it's up to us to decide whether we're going to stay in the flow of the Tao. Again, whatever name you want to put there, God, Spirit, Source. And when we look at 2,600 years ago of this teaching and how it applies to what we're going through today, I just find the connection so amazing that this wisdom was available all this time. And I sit there every once in a while and just think about what would have happened to the 2,600 years of history if human beings had actually applied what we're learning. How different history would have been, don't you think? It's even hard for us to imagine in our minds what that might look like, because we've seen a divergence from this teaching, from this truth. The Tao meaning the way, T being the shape or power, and Ching being in the book. So it's a way, a teaching of wisdom for us on how to live our lives. If you remember the story in the very beginning, when Lao Tzu was so fed up with life, with society, that he was, some say he was 500 or 600 years old, was headed into the forest to never return again. And they begged him at the gate, said, please write down this wisdom because it has made such a change in a few of us that are willing to listen. He got so disgusted with the rest that said, I'm out of here, I'm done. I've done everything I can do. But thankfully, if that story is correct, he did write down these 81 verses. I had to think too this week, I wonder what he didn't write down. You know? I mean, I'm sure he captured, excuse me, I'm sure he captured the essence of what his beliefs were. But I wonder what else the details were. Anyway, that's how my mind worked this week. Our quantum physicists tell us we only know 4% of the universe. We only know 4% of ourselves. And what the Tao Te Ching is pointing us to is to begin to explore, begin to look to the 96% that's unknown to us. And for me, one of the greatest spiritual teachers has been Einstein. And Einstein said this: everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. So in this 96% that we don't know about ourselves or about our world or about the universe, I think this is a clue Einstein gave us a long time ago, almost 100 years ago. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. And we're going to see as we continue through the Tao Te Ching today and also in the next couple of weeks, and then we move into the desire factor, which is completely focused on how we can take this holy energy and begin to make changes of what's blocking us in whatever area of our life it may be. It's not just about money, but it is also about money. It's not just about material things, but it is also about material things. I call it abundance. Abundance of everything in our lives. Pure abundance is our natural essence. And we have gone off course in many, many ways in what we have been domesticated in and what we have brought in as our belief systems that have blocked this incredible flow of pure abundance. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. And we're going to keep coming back to that as we go along. So let's look at verse 16. Become totally empty. Do you know how to become totally empty? Most of us don't. Because we've been domesticated and we live in a world that fills us up with all kinds of stuff. And the technology today is one of the, the great things technology has done, but one of the things it has done is bombard us with more stuff. And so we've got to find that way to become totally empty. Let your heart be at peace. Amidst the rush of worldly comings and goings, observe how endings become the beginnings. Things flourish each by each, only to return to source, to what is and what is to be. To return to the root is to find peace. To find peace is to fulfill one's destiny, and to fulfill one's destiny is to be constant. You notice Lao Tzu saying here, there's no peace in the rush, in the hunt, in the chase. All peace is when we learn to go inside and empty of everything. We've seen this through verse after verse up until even now. And you're going to see it more and more as he continues. To know the constant is called insight. Not knowing this cycle leads to disaster. Knowing the constant gives perspective. This perspective is impartial. And impartiality is the highest nobility. The highest nobility is divine. That's a lot of words here in that paragraph. But what he's essentially saying is as we get that perspective of going to center within us and emptying our minds and our bodies and getting still, we go back to Psalms 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. This is another way that he said it. And learning to empty gives us perspective, and in that perspective, we no longer begin to label. We no longer live in duality, good and bad. We begin to get in contact with that oneness within us. That is the divine, he said. Being divine, you will be one with the Tao. Or God, if you want to use that word, it's better for you. Being at one with the Tao is eternal. This way is everlasting, not endangered by physical death. Have you noticed how many times in these verses he's come back to physical death? Why? Because even today, 2,600 years later, it's the greatest fear all humans have. And he's talking about that as we learn to know beginnings, the endings become the next beginning, become the next ending, become the next beginning. That's the eternal peace. So living with constancy, the value of knowing the constancy of change. The only constant in life is change. By now we all know this to be true, have we not? How many times have you heard people in the last year go, I can't believe the change in our world, in our economy, in our lives. Pretty constant. Been going on for at least 2,600 years. It's the only constant we have is change. You know, there's an old joke that the only human being that likes change is a baby. But those of us who learn to accept that it is always going to change, always. If you look back over your life, how much has changed? He talks about the cycle. It's the cycle of no life, life, no life, life, no life, life. It's the process. And it continues whether you see it. I mean, I had the TV on the other day and they were talking about these, what are they called? Circadias? Is that what they are? These insects that are coming back? 17 years they've been hiding in the ground. Like, why were they created that way? But it's changed. They're coming out and they're going to do their thing and go back in the ground in 17 years from now. 2038. They're going to show up again. Change. Even in that way, there's always change. An ending may feel like a time to mourn. We've all been there. Lao Tzu invites us to know that after things flourish, they always return to source. I don't know about you, but this is a very comforting idea for me. You know, to almost to the day, my dad transitioned 2 years ago. And when I think about it, he transitioned back to source because his time to flourish here in the physical was complete. I'm so grateful, I thank God that he didn't have to go through, who had never understood the last 15 months in lockdown. And he missed all that. And I just wonder how good it really is where he is right now. For me, this is one of the most comforting teachings that the Taoist and the Tao Te Ching teaches, that every ending is the next beginning. And that beginning becomes the ending. And look how we've kind of took this and twisted it in our society. How do we celebrate birth of a baby? The birth of the baby is the beginning of the last ending. And it is the beginning of the next ending. And once we get that concept, there's just this incredible contentment for me, and knowing that there's this process that happens over and over again, and I can just go in the flow of it, observe it, and not have to be sad and mourn. Do I miss my dad? Yeah, I miss him a lot. In the 18 months I had with him, we grew very close, and I talked to him every week. But I just celebrate that ending that I observed was the beginning of something so much better for him. Our sense of peace comes from aligning with Source, where all cycles begin and end. That's where my dad is. He's back with Source. What happens next? I don't know. It's his journey. But that, for me, feels good. Take time to be detached observer, especially when an ending is causing you despair. Where in your life are you despairing an ending? Find a peace inside. Find that peace at center. That knowing whatever that ending is, there's another new beginning. We've heard this said in more religious terms. You know, wherever a door is closed, God opens a new door. Well, that teaching's not new. That's the teaching of at least 2,600 years ago. Remind yourself, no matter what is going on today, Source is at work here. No matter how bad it feels, no matter what the mourning is, or the sadness or despair that you're going through, understand, in the midst of all this, the Tao is at work. Source is at work. Write this down. This too shall pass. I think myself and others would have done much better in the last year if we had written this on the refrigerator. this too shall pass. And we're watching it pass. And the ending of a pandemic is a beginning of something new. What it is right now, we don't know. But that can be an excitement. Instead of a mourning, it's not like it was the last beginning. No, it never is. It's always new, always ever changing. Know this and let your thoughts flow in the constancy of change. That's the truth about life. Constancy of change. It's true about every institution. It's true about every country. It's true about every life. Constancy of change will always continue. So this comes from Wayne Dyer's on the Tao Te Ching. His affirmation for this: amidst the rush of worldly comings and goings, I observe how all endings become the next beginning. Don't you think, just thinking through that, just apply it to COVID? If we had remembered this the last 15 months, that there's an ending coming and a new beginning, would have helped all of us take a deep breath and just relax. Always, 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 after the ending comes the new beginning. So to do the Tao, here's my suggestion. Take the first 2 hours of a day this week and observe, be conscious of your endings becoming beginnings. You're ending your sleep. You're beginning to get up. Right? You're going to walk over and you're going to begin to brush your teeth. You're going to end that. Life, we talked about in the big scheme here, but it's happening every day. And every minute, you're having beginnings and endings, beginning and endings, beginning and endings. The whole day is nothing but beginnings and endings. And at some point at night, you end the day and go to sleep. You begin sleep. Constant. The constancy of change. And as you begin to become aware, self-aware of that, you begin to find a pattern that allows you to just kind of settle into it and observe, become the observer. Open to the truth that change is the only constant. And if you have sadness, if you have anger, if you have despair, if you have resentment, whatever it is, know that it will change. I'm going to jump forward in a month from now when we're going to start the energy work. I'm going to teach you a process to process your emotions. If we detach from our emotions, they are gone from our body in 90 to 120 seconds. If we learn how to detach from the mind and just feel the energy of it. Beginning, ending, new beginning. All what we're going to continue to do is build on this whole concept of learning how to consciously master our emotions. Emotions are nothing but energy in motion. And as we learn to master those emotions, we'll learn to apply this truth. Let's go to verse 17. Now I want you to put in this word leader here. I'm going to suggest you put something that applies to a role that you have. It could be parent, it could be teacher, it could be friend, it could be partner. Because this applies to any relationship, not just leader of a country. But that's how it's kind of written back then. With the greatest leader above them, people barely know one exists. Next comes one whom they love and praise. Next comes one whom they fear. And next comes one they despise and defy. It's easy to point to political leaders here. But I want you to point to yourself. And your relationship with people go through these 4 levels. You have relationships where you're totally in resonance with their energy. And you just connect. You don't even know they're there, or whatever they are there, it just flows. But we've also have been in relationships where the other apply. When a leader or a person in a role trusts no one will trust them. We have had people in our lives like this that we don't trust. Why? Because they don't trust themselves. If they did, they would put off the energy of trust. The great leader speaks little. He or she never speaks carelessly. He or she works without self-interest and leaves no trace. When all is finished, the people say, we did it ourselves. So living as an enlightened leader, living as an enlightened person, great people, great leaders don't lead anyone. They honor everyone's right to choose their own path. Their own path. There's a part of us that think we know what they should do. That's not the Tao. That's our own ego. Honor the right to everyone choose their own path and be personally responsible for whatever those choices are. Be that detached observer, providing suggestions only when asked. How many times do we think we know best and we just can't wait to inject? We're not listening. We're in our heads thinking about, well, I can one-up that one. That's not listening. That's not being an enlightened person or a leader. Be the observer, providing suggestions only when asked. Truly inspired people get results by what? Not by what they say, by their example, how they live. You don't have to tell anyone how spiritual you are. They get it. They see it and they feel it. Learn to resolve conflicts. How? Through love. Love is what? Compassion. Love is understanding. Love is honoring their position no matter how different it is from ours. Instead of believing you know what's best for others, trust that they know what's best for themselves. This isn't always easy, is it? We got all these great ideas popping on our head. Well, I only could tell them this one. It straightened everything up. Take pride in refusing to take credit for the achievement of all others. Havas from the 14th century, coming out of the Persian desert, said this, and I love this little poem that he has. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look at what happens with the love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Let's be the sun that lights up the sky. I know it's not what we were domesticated. I know it's not what we were taught. I know it's not what's common in our society today. But from the 14th century, we saw what was already happening. And it's so in alignment with what Lao Tzu's teaching from 2,600 years ago. How different would our society be if we began to implement that truth? The affirmation Wayne gave was, I truly trust that others do know what is best for them. I truly trust that I know. In doing the Tao, choose a time when you are to guide or supervise someone, and instead of saying anything, just nod. Just raise your eyebrows. Just give physical feedback and say nothing and watch what happens. Notice how your active observing with no words begins to impact their behavior. It is one of the most powerful things we can do as teachers and parents and leaders and people. Be connected, listen, actively listen, and don't talk. Because as soon as you talk, you are not listening. And most of us are in the habit of hearing someone say something, and we're upside our head trying to figure out how something really smart that we're going to say next. So there's no listening and there's no connection of the energy between people. Zip it. And listen. And feel. They will feel you. Verse 18. When the greatest of the Tao is present, action arises from one's own heart. He didn't say anything here about your head. He said true action comes from here. When the greatness of the Tao is absent, action comes from rules of kindness and justice. If you need rules to be kind and just, if you act virtuous, it is a sure sign that virtue is absent. Thus we see the great hypocrisy. You can take the words virtue out of here and put spiritual. If you try to act spiritual, you know, you've known these people, I've known them, I call them quote machines. It doesn't matter where you study unity or you study Catholicism or you study the Course in Miracles. They memorize a whole bunch. I call them Bible verse machine gun. They have more Bible verses than you do. Or more verses from the Course in Miracles. Or more from the Tao Te Ching. And he's saying, no. It's what you're living from, the energy that you're bringing forth in your relationships is what matters, not what you're saying. Not that you've memorized more verses than anyone else. That's acting virtuous. It means it's absent. It's the great hypocrisy. When kinship falls into discord, piety and rites of devotion arise. We have seen that in organized religion over and over and over again. Christianity today is so far from the Spirit of Christ that you can't even see it. But the rites and the passages, and oh yeah, we take communion and we have baptism, we do all those rites and are pious, but there's no action, there's no belief, and there's no teaching of what Jesus taught. Where's the love? Where's the love of your enemies? And it goes away in this movement to rites of dogma. When the country falls into chaos, official loyalists will appear and patriotism is born 2,600 years ago. Nothing has changed, folks. Today we have part of the country calling patriots those who attacked the Capitol and killed 5 people and tried to destroy as many police officers as they could and hang the vice president. And we call them patriots? No, they're not. That's a country in chaos. He knew about it 2,600 years ago. And we're living it today in 2021. Living without rules. Imagine for a moment, if you could close your eyes and in your imagination, imagine a moment in your life with no laws, no rules, and everyone lives peacefully and harmoniously. I welcome you. Close your eyes for a second. Can you even imagine this country with no laws and no rules? Because they don't need them. And that everyone understands how to live in peace and kindness and love and compassion. What a world this would be. What a world. We don't need rules to be kind and just. We can choose to live from the heart. When we live from the heart, no rules are needed. Now, you can't change 320 million people in America, but I can change me. And I can change to live from my heart and have no rules necessary. Because there is nothing more powerful than the power of love. True love. Unconditional, true love. And that's what Lao Tzu, and that's what Buddha, and that's what Jesus, that's what all the great spiritual leaders have pointed to over and over and over again in all religions all over the world. It's always about getting connected with love and dropping the human ego. Now, we put different names to it, and we put different practices to it, but it's the essence of all spiritual teachings all over the world. In the Tao orientation, unlimited joy, kindness, abundance, well-being flows and makes all rules obsolete. No need for them. You will know what is right to do. How do you know what is right to do? Are you living unlimited joy, kindness, abundance, well-being? If not, something's not in alignment. Something's disconnected. Let all your actions rise from your Tao-centered heart. Not here. Not from analysis. Not from memory. Not from the intellect. It's from here. Learning to feel this and letting that energy move through up to the head and through the rest of your being. Don't act virtuous, be virtue. Don't act happy, be happy. Don't act whatever it's trying to do. That's the mask. That's the human mask. You know? That's come in here at Unity of Harrisburg and put on a mask and say, well, I'm here, I got my Unity mask on. No. Be the love. Be the peace. I've showed you this before. I had to show it again because this is one of the hardest. I guess it's sometimes I'm always teaching me. But have I said this? Everyone you run into during the week is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him? I find this has really been hard for me to integrate into me. Because my head's already gone to analyzing and judging, critiquing, criticizing. I'm like, well, you just criticized God. I don't think I want to do that. It changes our whole interaction with people. If we're willing to integrate this and begin to practice it, that everyone we see this week, if you don't take anything else away from today, take this. Get it in your head that everyone you see is God speaking to you. And watch what happens. I act virtuously. I do not need rules to be kind and just. Be virtue. Be happy. Spend some time understanding, why do you stop at a red light? Have a driver's license? Wear a seatbelt? Wear a mask? And see if your ego enjoys breaking the rules. And why? Why does that matter? We have a whole segment of the country that will not get vaccines and will not wear masks. Why? I mean, only they can answer that. But this is a live example of what he's talking about here. What's driving your decisions? Is it in the divine? Is it source? Is it the Tao? Or is your ego? We all have to answer that. And one's going to make us peaceful and happy and flow, and the other's going to constrict and get tight and cause all kinds of turmoil and chaos within the person, but also begins to act out in the rest of society. Let's go to verse 19. Give up sainthood, renounce wisdom, and it will be 100 times better for everyone. Throw away morality and justice, and people will do the right thing. Throw away industry and profit, and there will be no thieves. What? He just said throw out everything. We just learned that the hell is, right? In the last 18 verses. Now you want to throw it out. What are you doing here, Lao Tzu? All of these are outward forms alone, and they are not sufficient in themselves. So what he's doing here is setting an example for us to do exactly what I did, going, what are you talking about? You just told us to be this. And what he's trying to explain here, I believe, is outward is not as important as inward. Even the things that we quote good. It is more important to see the simplicity, to realize one's true nature, to cast off selfishness and temper desire. It's going back again to the Tao versus ego. And all the things, the ego, always more. Gotta have more of this, more of that. Never happy, never satisfied, never content. Versus if we go inside. And so I think what he was talking there in the beginning is we can act this way out here. But what's so much more important is how we're feeling. Are you really feeling that love? Are you really feeling that peace, that harmony and balance and happiness? It appears first that we're being told to abandon the virtues of the Tao. Instead, he is saying the outward forms are not enough to live the Tao way. He focuses here on education, the legal system, and business, and I also added in religion. All four of these we've been domesticated in our lives. We've watched examples of is do all the right things here and you'll go to heaven for sure. And he's saying that don't work. It's how you feel, how you're living from within. That experience that you have within you will determine the experience that you're going to have on the outside. Most important is to find the Tao center, the center of the divine within you. This is a constant beat of Lao Tzu through 81 verses. Leave this alone, come back inside. No different than what we learned in the Eye of the Storm or in the Five Agreements. Every teacher is teaching us to come back inside and let this be. Observe your relationship to systems of education, justice, business, and religion. How are you interacting with that? What's important, what's going on inside, or what's important is how you show up in the physical and appear to other people. Live without attachments by being generous. Discover your heart's desire. Dharma. You have a purpose. You have your life purpose. Another way to say it, you have your heart's desire. And I dare say, until you're in your heart's desire, you will not be peaceful. Why? Because I believe our souls are continuing to try to work us back to get in alignment with whatever that life purpose is. Pay attention to that, because it will guide you. If you listen, it will guide you to where you will find that peace and happiness. Again, we've seen where Paul said in Romans, live in it, but not of it. This is the same concept. We're seeing again and again in the Tao. You're here, you're in the physical. Learn to be here, learn to detach, and learn to stay at center. Wayne Dyer said this, I am moral, profitable, and a genius extraordinaire. You all know you are a genius extraordinaire. How many of you spent your life telling yourself that? How many heard your parents tell you, you're a genius extraordinaire? We don't have to wait for anybody to tell us. We can tell ourselves. I am moral, profitable, and a genius extraordinaire, regardless of what any transcript or bank statement might say. External. Come inside and choose to be a genius extraordinaire. To do the Tao, post this very saying that I just gave you. Put it somewhere you can see it and say it and say it and say it again. Repeat it until it becomes your way of being. You will feel a sense of inner peace as you release the external. Do you have the courage to choose to be a genius extraordinaire? The majority of people don't. The majority of people allow their ego to sabotage this and say, oh no, you're not. And then they'll give a whole list of why you're not. You need to kick that to the curb. You are a genius extraordinaire when you choose. And when you allow it to repeat and repeat until it settles into you as a belief system, you will begin to live a life from the energy of that. And not all the list of things that you are not. that your ego wants to bring in the conflict that it comes with, the untruth. Last verse today. Give up learning, and you will be free from all your cares. What is the difference between yes and no? What is the difference between good and evil? Must I fear what others fear? Should I fear desolation when there is abundance? Should I fear darkness when that light is shining everywhere? In spring, some go to the park and climb the terrace, but I alone am drifting and knowing where I am. Not knowing where I am. Like a newborn babe before it learns to smile, I'm alone without a place to go. Most people have too much. I alone seem to be missing something. Mine is indeed the mind of an ignoramus in its unadulterated simplicity. Whoa. Where is he going with this? I am but a guest in this world. While others rush along to get things done, I accept what is offered. I alone seem foolish in earning little and spending even less. Other people strive for fame. I avoid the limelight, preferring to be left alone. Indeed, I seem like an idiot. No mind, no worries. I drift like a wave in the ocean. I blow aimlessly in the wind. All men and women settle down in grooves. I alone am stubborn and remain outside. But wherein I am most different from others is knowing to take sustenance from the Great Mother. This is one of the longest verses of the 81. And probably for me, anyway, it was one of the most difficult to wrap my head around this. You know, to call myself an ignoramus and an idiot flies in anything that ever felt right for me. And to say that I'm lost in all of this as we go through. So let's see if we can make some sense. I think what he was talking about is what Ram Dass did, a book that probably most of us looked through at least 25 years ago. Be here now. This is the best that I can understand what he's talking about here. Not in the past, not in the future. You've heard me say this over and over again. No God exists in the past or the future. There's only God, there's only source, there's only the Tao in the present. Be here in your mind and body in a state of appreciation and absence of longing for the future, or worry about the future, or guilt and shame and blame about the past. Be here. Be now. We talk about this a lot. But many times in my coaching sessions, someone will say this, and I say, well, tell me how you do that. And then they're like, well, sound good. Can you really be here now? Do you know how to do that? Because that's what he's teaching here. Being here now is accomplished by adopting an acceptance of life as presented by the Tao. Here and now is what's happening here and now. Not an hour from now, not an hour ago, here and now. I had to bring this back up because I love this symbol. It's in my office. Lao Tzu on the water buffalo riding backwards. Water buffalo symbolizes life. He's teaching here to live at the level of trust that you don't even have to peak. I try this, and I use the word try because I haven't succeeded. I find this incredibly difficult. Part of my whole corporate training was strategic planning and looking to the future and understanding patterns and all that. And it's like, how do you drop all that and live in this here and now? To actually not even look what's coming tomorrow, what's coming an hour from now. Get on the water buffalo backwards. Be in the flow. Another way to say that is if you're in the river on your rowboat, throw the oars over. No longer directing, going with the flow of the Tao. So living without striving. This is accomplished by surrendering the ego and the constant pursuit of more. The ego is what is always looking for more, what's always looking to the future, what gets you to worry or gets you into the guilt of the past. It's in the silence we begin to know the unlimited abundance and eternal light. It's only in the silence. It's never out doing the circumference stuff. We got to connect with it back in that center of the divine. Find satisfaction. In June, we're going to teach that satisfaction is the tipping point. In our energy flow, if we can get to 51% positive energy, we're at satisfaction. If you can look across your life, at your business, at your money, at your relationships, at your health, and be in satisfaction, you're at least at 51%. It's a great starting place. Because the other question is, where in your life are you unsatisfied? And that's going to focus you, focus you on where the work needs to be done. Find satisfaction. Trade in striving for arriving. A different energy around those two words, big time. I'm striving to get, or I'm arriving at. I'm here. I'm here and now. And accept whatever is offered. Practice letting go of thoughts about what's not here and now. In studies that scientists are doing right now, and the whole idea and understanding of energy and thoughts and emotions, the majority of us spend our time not in the here and now, and not about what we want. We spend the time about what we don't want, and the energy of what we don't want. So affirm here, it's all perfect. God's love is everywhere and forgets no one. I trust in this force to guide me, and I'm not allowing ego to enter now. I love this affirmation because it about touches all the bases. And I have one more in this section. Take time to let go and let God. We hear this all the time, right? You need to let go and let God. And you ask them, well, how do you do that? And you don't get very many specific answers. What I suggest is, here's an affirmation that you can use. I'm letting go and letting God. I'm in the exhilarating flow of the Tao. And again, put whatever word for Tao you want. But I think you have to feel it. You can say it, and that has some energy. But unless you're feeling it, you're experiencing that flow, nothing changes. You're still over here. We got to move to the heart. I'm doing nothing, rather I am being done. I like this where Wayne Dyer went to. I'm being done. That's what life is doing here. And I'm okay with it because I trust it. I trust the process. There's a greater intelligence in me at work here. So how do we do this now? Begin to become aware when you are not present and content. Take a day and just observe yourself and ask yourself, am I here and now? Am I present? And begin to watch your energy and begin to watch your habits and see how much of your day is not spent in present, not spent here and now. It's thoughts of past, future, right? Begin to know that in this situation, and in some way, what your striving ego rejects is actually sustenance from the Divine Mother. In the Tao, they talk about, the Heavenly Father, Divine Mother. Mother being the nurturing, what we talked about in the very beginning about Mother's Day, the yin and the yang. It's the feminine energy. And that's flowing to us to what? Take care of us. Has it not forever? We just need to trust it and get out of our heads and feel that truth inside. I love this so much I had to bring it back from last week. Surrender to grace. The ocean cares for each wave until it reaches the shore. You are given more help than you will ever know. Trust that help. It's all inside. Let's go to silence, please. In whatever way works for you. Take a deep breath. Feel the flow of the Tao. Feel the Spirit. And on the exhale, let go. Let go of the ego thoughts. Allow yourself to come down out of your head into your heart space. And I invite you to just, with your eyes closed, your spiritual eyes, just look to the forehead, center of your forehead, and connect with the light. The Tao Te Ching calls it the great river, the crystal river. Let it flow through you. We know what happens with water when it moves. It refreshes, it stays vital and vibrant. We also know what happens when it gets stuck. It gets stagnant. Let it flow through your mind, your heart, and your belly, and out the bottoms of your feet. Be in that river of light. No oars, no destination. Just be. Just be happy. Be peaceful. Be calm. Just be. And so it is.